Hi, I'm Joe Markley, trying to keep at least one New Year's resolution, which is to return to doing the videos that I used to do as a state senator. I've had many people that I've talked to tell me how much they enjoyed them and encouraged me to do it as I had. And so this will be the first of what I hope will be a steady stream, or at least a trickle of them, over the next few months. And I'm going to talk about something that I've talked about a great deal, and you might feel you've heard enough about, which is the tolls proposal, which is Governor Lamont has been pushing. But there's a couple of things I want to bring up. One, some comments that were made by a senior legislator on the Democratic side, Representative Bob Godfrey. But first, an absolutely outrageous thing that just came to light over this weekend, which is an email that went out from a resist group promoting what was supposed to be a town hall meeting featuring Governor Lamont and State Senator Will Haskell, freshman state senator down in Fairfield County, on the tolls issue. But the email went out marked top secret, please do not share, because it was only going to go to people who were in favor of tolls. So the idea was, at the behest, according to the email, of the governor and of Senator Haskell, the idea was to get as many toll supporters there as possible without letting those of us who oppose tolls even know that the meeting was going on. This meeting was scheduled for Tuesday night, I think it's January 7th, in Westport. It has been canceled, and I think it's been canceled because the cat got out of the bag and they knew that anti-toll people would be coming to it. It is, I would go so far as to say shameful that public officials would be plotting to have public meetings and keeping them secret from people who disagree with them. I have to say that I have always felt that I want my opponents in my audience because I feel like I have an argument that's so strong that I can win some of them over, or at least blunt the force of their opposition. And I also want to hear what the other side has to say, if only so that I can do a better job of replying to it, responding to it when I have the opportunity. The idea that the governor and Will Haskell, who's a very young man, a man who ought to respect the idea of hearing the opinion of others, the idea that they would connive with a group supporting tolls to keep us out, to keep the general public from being able to speak their mind, I think is a terrible thing. And we have to be vigilant to this, as we have to be vigilant to so much. There's going to be town hall meetings, presumably. We may not get much notice of them if this is the way they're going to go about it. But we have to be ready to show up for those meetings and make a noise. And if they don't have meetings, if they don't have hearings before they vote on this in the legislature, shame on them. What Governor Lamont would like to do is call the legislature back in second week of January. I think they've been talking about January 16th, 17th, something like that. He promised that he would have meetings around the state before they did any voting. If they don't have these meetings and they go into vote, I think that's disgraceful as well. But it's an odd thing that he even wants to have a special session in the middle of January to take up tolls when the whole legislature will be back on the first Wednesday in February and could go through a normal legislative process. I think he's scared of a normal legislative process because he knows that will involve public hearings. Hundreds of opponents will show up. Legislators will get spooked and oppose it. And at a certain point, if legislators are saying, I don't want to do it, and the public's saying it's a bad idea, maybe you ought to consider that they've got a point. They certainly had a point with the income tax. That was the last time we had a fight like this. And I'll say one more thing about why tolls are so important. There are, in my opinion, defensible lines, just like there are in warfare. There's lines you can hold and lines that you really can't hold. The lines you can hold in politics are usually involve the imposition of a new tax. It's hard to get people to rally against a 1% or a 0.5% increase in an income tax or 0.25% on a sales tax. But to impose an income tax, that was something people were really ready to fight. And to impose tolls is something that people are ready to fight. we have to take advantage of those defensible lines, and tolls is one of them. And this is a chance where we can stop something, we can get a victory, and we can develop some momentum for the fall. The other thing I want to talk about is these comments by State Representative Bob Godfrey. Godfrey has been in the legislature from the Danbury area since, I believe, 1988. So he's one of the very senior members of the House of Representatives. And he's a deputy speaker. He has a very high position within the Democratic caucus. He's a very much a standard issue liberal in a lot of ways, I'd say, quite liberal. But he was surprisingly frank in a recent interview with The Patch. And if you're looking for it, it was a December 29th Patch interview with State Representative Bob Godfrey. And he's a toll opponent. The cynical might say that's in part because he's from Danbury, and Danbury is an area that would be especially hit by the tolls. But what he had to say about the process was something that a Republican might have said. He said, for instance, my colleagues, talking about the legislature, are uncomfortable because every time you turn around, it's a different proposal. I think people and legislators don't trust Governor Lamont and his proposals. I think that's a real issue in people's opposition. Amazing to me that a Democratic legislator would come straight out and say that neither the voters nor his fellow Democratic legislators trust the governor. Godfrey made an admission that should be obvious to everybody, but again, toll proponents don't want to hear it, that truck tolling, commercial truck tolling, would make items more expensive. Duh, how's it not going to do that? But that's something we have to remind people of when they say, oh, it's only the trucks that are paying it. We'll pay every dime that the trucks have to pay because those costs will just be passed on to us. Godfrey complained that the delay in bonding could impact costs for towns for snow plowing. This is something that the Republican leadership has been harping on too, that Lamont has held up normal, reasonable bonding for roads at the local level that usually would have been done long ago, and some of that money goes for winter storms. And he's done it. He hasn't admitted that he's done it, but it's pretty obvious he's done it as leverage over legislators to get them to vote for tolls. Godfrey admitted that, and he said he doesn't think it has changed one vote. So not only has it been an unwise policy, a policy that really goes against public policy and the good of our communities, but it's been a failed attempt. And a lot of this is because I don't think Lamont doesn't have experience at the Capitol, obviously, or much political experience anywhere. And he brought a team of people up with him who neither were his own people nor were the usual Democratic operatives up at the Capitol that at least know their way around. Lamont went a kind of a third way, which is to say, get me a bunch of resumes and let's try to find talent. There's an appeal to that, but I don't know that it's necessarily a good idea because you end up with a group of people who don't know you and who don't know the legislature either. And I think they've suffered as a result. Godfrey said in his comments that Lamont's legislative liaisons, every State Department has somebody who is basically put there by the governor, who then is communicates between the agency and the legislators who deal with that agency. So in my experience over the years with Human Services, I dealt with the legislative liaison from the Department of Social Services, who was a Democrat and who was a political operative, but who was also an intelligent young woman who understood the issues and who I was able to work with very successfully and comfortably. Godfrey said that Lamont's legislative liaison operation is the worst he has seen from any of the 6 governors that he has served under. That's a long historical benchmark to be looking back over, and it's a surprisingly strong statement from a top Democratic legislator to basically condemn critical choices that Governor Lamont made. We've got this tolls issue on the ropes. The trouble is, when I talk about holding a line, what we've got is kind of like a goal line stand. But the other side can keep running the ball and running the ball and running the ball. They're not necessarily limited to 4 downs. So we've got to prevent them from getting it over the line. If it gets over the line once, we'll never get rid of it. But if we can keep stopping it, eventually it will be close enough to the election that they're going to give up on it. And the election will give us a chance to show that it isn't what people want by defeating the people that have been supporting it. So stay vigilant. I'll try to keep you informed on goings on concerning tolls where public outcry might be useful. And I'll get back to you shortly, if I keep my resolution, with some more political talk. I'm Joe Markley, and thank you as always for your attention.